I haven't drawn it, but the car park will consist of 8 levels, each of which would be named after one of the Nintendo handheld consoles. From the car park, guests would walk through the village, which can be seen in this picture. There would be multiple branching paths, each of which would contain a mix of shops, entertainment venues, bars and restaurants. The image contains a reference to numerous Nintendo characters. Going from left to right, these are the Pokemon store, something which was extremely popular when the pop-up store opened in London last year, where customers could be seen queuing right around the shopping mall just to get in, the shop closing early and stock running low. There's also Nookington's, based on the store of the same name from the Animal Crossing series, which debuted in 2001 on the Nintendo 64 and GameCube. This would be for generic Nintendo merchandise from the other games in the Nintendo franchise. Wii. Okay, I'm sorry, that's just my crude humour. These are toilet blocks, subsequently named after the 2006 console of the same name. We're going to skip the middle bit for a minute. Then, on the right, we have Marins. This is a reference to 1993's The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, released on the Game Boy, which was subsequently released in 2019 on the Switch. Marin is a local who loves to sing. It seemed appropriate to make Marin's a karaoke bar. And finally, Giovanni's. This is a reference to the Team Rocket boss from the Pokemon series, who enjoys the finer things in life, and as such, would be a restaurant for fine diners and couples. In the middle you can see a Nintendo Switch. This is the entrance gate to the theme park, and as such, guests would have to walk through this as if they were entering the video games themselves. Within the Switch would be both ticket booths and automated ticket machines. After exiting the Switch entrance building, guests will have to cross a bridge to enter the main hub, and as the picture shows, are greeted by Wispy Willows, a boss from the Kirby series who first made his debut in 1992's Kirby Dream Land on the Game Boy. He is usually the first boss in games, and it seemed apt to include him here. This is also an area which acts as a bit of shade during the hotter days of the season. Directly behind this is the Game Over stop, which is basically a covered seating area to offer shelter from the rain and offers place for those who want to bring their packed lunches to eat. It's a bit of a nod to the entrance of Fort Park, which offers guests a place to take refuge when it's wet, as well as acting as a meeting point. Looking at this picture, you can see some of the land entrances along with another toilet block on the right, and what looks like a museum on the left. Moving on to the next picture, you can get an appreciation of how the central hub will look from above. The museum next to the entrance is Blathers Museum from Animal Crossing. However, it is run by Monita from the 2012 Wii U game Nintendo Land. This is because Blathers has been called away to run a new museum on a desert island, which has shown some promise, i.e. 2020's New Horizon on the Switch. The function of this museum is similar to what you used to be able to find in the Super Smash Bros. Games, which debuted on Nintendo 64 in 1999, an encyclopedia of information about the characters and the games that they came from. The idea from this came both from the Smash Bros. Games and visiting the Rollercoaster restaurant Alton Towers. This would all be done via a touchpad computer and would be housed over 2 floors to cater for potential demand. Moving round, you can see the path which leads to the first land, the Mushroom Kingdom. In the next video, called 1.1 Mushroom Kingdom, which focuses on characters from the Mario franchise, and subsequently corresponds to Super Nintendo Land, currently scheduled for Universal Orlando Epic Universe, you will go into the rides that are featured within this land. However, from the outside, a water fountain can be seen, along with an entrable Peach's Castle. The design for this castle was heavily influenced by Peach's Castle from 2017's Super Mario Odyssey on the Nintendo Switch. It is also worth noting that the entrance gate is the same as a goalpost that you would cross at the end of some Mario games. This was first introduced in Super Mario World on the SNES back in the early 90s, and is featured more recently in the Super Mario Maker games. Moving round, we have the On It Police. This is a reference to Mother, or Earthbound series of games, which was released on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in the mid-90s. Obviously it's dependent on where you were from as to what it was called, which I feel received underwhelming development outside of Japan. This building primarily focuses as an info point, buggy rental point for young children and for those with limited mobility, a lost and found department, as well as a park security office. Moving round, we have the path to the second themed area, the Retroland. This will be episode 1.2. This contains games that made their debut predominantly on classic consoles such as the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES, and the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, or SNES. This would be an alternative to the Mushroom Kingdom land in Universal Orlando Epic Universe. In the image, we can see a mural of the 1981 arcade game Donkey Kong. This houses an indoor player for younger children to ape around, for lack of a better word. Behind this, you can see Chef Kawasaki, another nod to the Kirby games, who made his debut in the late 90s Kirby game, Kirby's Fun Park, or Superstar as it was known, on the SNES. Originally a mini-boss, this character had a love of cooking and can produce health recovery items for Kirby and friends. From this, it was decided that he would be the face of the park's only completely specialty dietary requirements restaurant. It is worth pointing out that the other restaurants in this park will cater for these people. However, there would not be as wide a variety as there would be in this restaurant. Behind this, a mountain can be seen. This will house a log flume ride based on the mid-80s game Ice Climber, which debuted on the NES. Finally, you may have noticed the entrance gate is pixelated. This is to reflect that the graphics back in the olden days were quite pixelated. Also, the sign from the entrance is that of a NES system, one of the company's first consoles, which, in most parts of the world, was produced in the early to mid-80s. Next, we have the meet and greet point. This is the place of photos or characters from the Nintendo franchises. It is also worth pointing out that this area also has a secret path between places within the Retroland and the Kingdom of Hyrule, which will be in video 1.3. Speaking of which, the Kingdom of Hyrule, which is based on the Legend of Zelda games and is another alternative to the Mushroom Kingdom, is next. The entrance area is based on a mixture of sources, both from 98's Ocarina of Time on the N64 and 2006's Twilight Princess on the GameCube and Wii, and is meant to depict Hyrule Castle town. Whilst more buildings and authentic experiences such as masonry could be included, this area contains Telma's Tavern, a bar from Twilight Princess, which acts as the land's food outlet, and a Temple of Time. The Temple of Time is based on a restored version of the destroyed version of the Temple of Time from 2017's The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is an interactive museum, which is all I'm going to say for now about it. In the background, a Hyrule Castle can be seen. Guests will be able to enter this. It's worth mentioning at this point that both this land and the next one are the two largest lands in the theme park. The entrance to this land features the royal crest. Moving round, next we have the Pokemon Center, which is a reference to Pokemon. In this game, you could take your Pokemon to these, and the nurse would heal the Pokemon for free. As a result, it would seem apt to make this the park's medical point. Inside the building, guests are greeted by a Chansey statue, a receptionist. As a side note, If they could hire someone called Joy, this would fit wonderfully with the image. And a healing machine. This building would house numerous sick bays along with trained medical staff to care for unwell guests. As a nod to many characters and as a bit of light relief, a sliding in-out sign will be visible in the centre, relating to medical characters that are featured within Nintendo games, such as Nurse Joy from Pokemon, Dr. Mario, a 1990s Tetris take, or Dr. Luigi, an early 2010s remake of Dr. Mario, along with many others. Moving out of the Pokemon Center, we move on to the fourth land, Pokemon Land. This is the second land within the original Universal Orlando Epic Universe videos I was planning to do. So the next set of videos will start with a 2. Video 2.1, Pokemon Land, will be based on the Kanto region, the first 150 Pokemon for those who are not up in their Pokemon knowledge, which made its game debut in Red and Blue in the mid to late 90s on the Game Boy. Details about my interpretation of this land will be scarce in this image, but the reason for why I've done this will be explained in a later video. From this image, more astute Pokemon fans may notice Ash Ketchum, the main protagonist in the anime, his house, and behind this, Professor Oak's lab. When designing this, I tried to fit the entrance part around Pallet Town. On the left, going from front to back, we have a Pokemart. This will be the land's food point, and as Pokemon are given rare candies to help level them up, I felt it right to make this place the place to sell sweets and unhealthy things. Behind this is the Pokemon Gym, where you'll be able to experience the Pokemon battles. But again, I'll go on about this in more detail at a later date. And the SS Anne. Don't worry though, it's not going to sink, unlike in the anime. Finally, on the right, we have the start of Iridian Forest. The Pokeball makes up the land's entrance along with the 8 gym badges featured in the anime and the original game. Next, we have a Cooking Mama restaurant, which is based on the game series of the same name, which made its debut in 2006 on the Nintendo DS handheld console. Whilst we have briefly touched on it, each land contained a relevantly themed dining experience. Cooking Mama's will be the one featured in the central hub, and is a generically themed restaurant catering for most styles. The fifth land, episode 2.2, is the Space World, which is based upon games which are set in space. From the image, the Great Fox, first featured in the Star Fox Starwing or Lilac War series, again depending where you're from, which first debuted in 1993 on the SNES. This contains a simulator ride, as well as being able to walk around some of the Great Fox itself without having to board the ride itself. This is also similar for Samus Aran's starship from the Metroid series, which made its debut in '86 on the NES. The design for this ship is based predominantly from 2002's Metroid Prime on the GameCube, and will feature an immersive experience which may not be suitable for younger guests. Finally, in the centre, an F-Zero sign can be seen. This is a roller coaster based on this series, which made its debut in 1990 on the SNES. The roller coaster covers the majority of the land, and as such, the theme of the world and its entrance is Mute City from the F-Zero games, with the 2 ships from the other games in the landing bay, who are just happening to be visiting by at the same time. I decided not to call it Mute City just to avoid any conflict of thoughts between those 3 games. Now, most theme parks have in some shape or form an arcade, and it seemed that the Warrior Red game series, which first debuted in 2003 on the Game Boy Advance and focused on short games, was a good option. There will be a mixture of bell or ticketed games and standard arcade games. As with traditional ticketed arcades, the more you collect, the better the prize you can earn. I mentioned that they will be referred to as bells. This is because the prize con will be operated by Tom Nook, who trades bells for being able to upgrade your house amongst other things in the Animal Crossing series. Moving on to the sixth and final land. Episode 2.3 is based around Bowser's Castle, another realm based on the Mushroom Kingdom. Although this is included within the Super Nintendo land at Universal Orlando Epic Universe and features a Mario Kart ride, I feel it would be better to separate them, as it allows for a greater number of characters to be included, as the characters within the Mario franchise is extremely large if you include main characters and enemies. The entrance to this land is completely different to the others, as shown in the image, and is based on 2008 Mario Kart Wii. There is not much else to be noted from this image. However, Bowser's throne can be seen as you enter the castle. Moving on to the technical aspects, the park will have smartphone compatibility, with there being an app for the park, which includes a map, QR codes, which correspond to the Professor Layton series, released in the late 2000s on the Nintendo Dual Screen or DS, where scanning them will allow guests to access a puzzle, just like when you click on areas of the screen during your games. These are scattered all around the park and range in difficulty. There would be an incentive completing them all, but that would have to be decided at a later date. Super Mario the Ride follows a similar style to this, in which we follow the adventures of Mario as he tries to rescue Princess Peach from the evil Bowser and his minions. Just before we take a look at the ride, it's worth pointing out that for some reason certain characters are unable to draw, but please just bear with me, it's more about the story than the image. Also, to simplify things, I have only drawn one of each enemy type, but others and sometimes Mario will not be visible from the angles in which the picture is drawn, and certain parts of the ride may actually move, but I will mention this when they arise. The first image is of Toads, seemingly baking a cake. This would be in the ride queue area and is just something to set the scene before the ride. The second image is a picture of the cars guests will ride in. As you can see, it will be adorned with Mario's emblem and would be painted red to represent Mario. After guests board the ride and before they actually leave the station, they will see a sign saying Cake Party and an arrow pointing them to a warp pipe, which transports guests into Mushroom Kingdom. As we can see, Princess Peach is hosting a cake party and is torn between two lovely looking cakes, one of which is the cakes that Toad will making in the ride entrance, and the other is a semi-familiar looking cake, which is the one from Peach's Bakery. That cake contains the Koopalings and Bowser Jr., whom, on a loop, appear to be jumping out of the cake. Guests are then transported through a warp pipe to Mario's house, whom is informed by a Toad that the Koopalings and Bowser Jr. have kidnapped Princess Peach, whom then chases after them in order to free the princess. As mentioned earlier, with the cake, the story is loosely based around 2009's New Super Mario Bros. Wii on the Nintendo Wii. Guests enter the warp pipe and emerge in World 1, Mushroom Kingdom. Mario is greeted by both a Koopa Trooper on the left and a Goomba on the right. The world also contains a question mark block and a warp pipe, which should be familiar to those who have played any of the Mario games. On the far right is a castle which belongs to Larry Koopa, one of the Koopalings. Although it's not possible to see, it's worth pointing out that after every alternate room, guests will be transported into a castle, and, with the odd exception, will have to pass under the boss looking down on you as you enter that castle. The next room shows Mario leaving after he's beaten Larry Koopa. Guests then enter the warp pipe and come out in World 2, the desert world. Guests have to swerve around Pokies, front right, and Dry Bones, back left, as they make their way into Roy Koopa's castle. People who have fought Roy Cooper in previous games are aware that he likes to hide in the pipes in the ceiling and try to flatten an unsuspecting Mario. This scene is a repetition of this boss fight. Moving on to World 3, the Frozen World. Guests will have to pass under the ocean's tongue and watch out for bob-ombs and boos as they make their way into Lemmy Cooper's castle. Lemmy Cooper's boss fight often revolve around him sending giant balls hurtling towards Mario in an attempt to flatten him. In this scene, Mario is doing a triple jump and would move back and forth towards Lemmy Cooper. The fourth world is the Water World, and this scene takes place underwater. In this scene, there is no castle, as I felt it would have broken the aesthetics of the world to show the castle underwater. Instead, guests make their way through to the boss, Wendy Cooper, via the warp pipe. In this image, transparent bubbles would be pushed up from the warp pipes via a gentle fan to give the impression that you're underwater. Also, both the bloopers, left, and Cheep Cheeps, right, will bob up and down, and Mario's arms will move to make it appear as if he's swimming. Coins, which Mario would usually collect in order to gain extra lives, can also be seen on the floor. Wendy's fight differs slightly from the game, in which the water level rises and falls. However, to simplify things, there is a broken window which is letting in the water, and the flight slowly becomes underwater. It is worth pointing out that no real water is used in this scene, and it would be made to look like it's part of the background. Moving on to World 5, the Jungle World. In this world, Mario will be seen swinging on a vine underneath guests as he hops between stalking piranha plants on the left, whose necks extend up and down, and wigglers on the right. In this boss fight, Mario takes on Iggy Cooper, whom has recruited a chain chomp which bounces up and down to defeat Mario. In World 6, Rock World, guests pass jumping Monty rolls, front right, and get really close to a sledge grower, left, and can see several brick blocks which in the games could contain either coins or an item to help Mario. In the boss fight for World 6, Mario takes on Morton Cooper Jr., whose jumps have the power to raise part of the floor to create new obstacles. During this scene, several of the floors will slightly move up and down. Also, as this is black and white, it's very hard to tell, but Mario has picked up a Fire Flower power-up, which grants him the ability to shoot fireballs at his enemies. World 7, Cloud World. This world has the most moving parts out of all of them. The Bonzo Bills, front centre, which the guest will head straight towards before veering off the last second, will spin clockwise to help give the effect that it's moving, whilst the Fuzzies, behind, will move back and forth along the path on which they are bound. The blocks in the background also bob up and down. In the 7th boss battle, Mario takes on the last of the Koopalings, Ludwig von Koopa, who has the ability to hover in the air for a brief period of time. Mario has also picked up the propeller mushroom, which allows him to soar into the air. This is useful as in this fight, they are both fighting on platforms which are rapidly ascending, and will move slightly up and down to recreate the effect. Finally, World 8. This world starts outside Bowser's Kingdom, where Princess Peach is being held captive. Guests are ambushed by Bowser Jr., Bowser's son, in the front left, and Kamek, Bowser's second in command, front right, whom fly in a circle above the guests' heads. From here, guests go straight into Bowser's castle. Usually in 2D games, when the player finally enters the chambers of Bowser, they have to dodge fireballs which are hurled at them. This room recreates that effect, and guests can see Bowser as they head towards him. The 3 walls are on conveyor belts, which go round in circles, which makes it seem like the fireballs are always coming towards you, or that new fireballs have been launched at you. Bowser also appears to be generating a fireball in his mouth. Finally, We move on to the last scene, the fight with Bowser and rescuing Peach. In the Mario universe, the size of Bowser is always changing, so it's hard to kind of justify his size. Therefore, to make him seem scary, I made him extremely large. Guests veer underneath Bowser's arms and curve back under a bridge. In the 2D games, it's usually customary to defeat Bowser by hitting the axe behind him, which chops the bridge down and sends Bowser tumbling into lava. Although it may look like Bowser isn't actually on a bridge, the bridge is angled so that he is standing on it, and he's trying to block Mario's path to the princess. After passing the axe, Mario goes to rescue the princess, and in escape out of the warp pipe, guests are immediately transported back to the station to exit the ride.